many of his powers. In Oman, troops have fired into the air to break up anti-government protests in the northern city of Soha, fourth day of protest there. At least one person was killed on Saturday. Sultan Qaboos bin Said, who's been in power for 4 decades, has promised more jobs and better unemployment benefits.
مسائل مربوط به داخل کشور ما
As we have always emphasized, the internal issues of our country is completely domestic, and no country is and will be allowed to interfere in the internal affairs of our country. The issues related to these individuals will be dealt with in a framework of law by judicial authorities.
In Zimbabwe, anti-government protesters had called on people to join what they described as a million citizen march on Tuesday, demanding that President Mugabe step down. But it does look as though very few people turned out. In recent days, more than 40 opposition activists who met in Zimbabwe have been arrested and charged with treason. They were detained while attending a lecture on anti-government protests in the Middle East and have been accused of plotting an Egyptian-style uprising. The groups denied any wrongdoing. Here's Jonah Hull.
The day has got off to a relatively calm, relatively normal start. Things are calm and quiet in downtown Harare. Relatively, I say, because I'm also told that since Saturday there have been sightings of an increased security presence throughout the capital, armoured cars on patrol sighted, water cannon parked down side streets, riot police on patrol, roadblocks, and even on Monday night, I'm told, people were told by the police to go home early, a sort of informal curfew, but no sign at all of any organised gathering in any numbers, certainly not the million citizens called for to march in Harare in an email campaign that's been going around for the last week or two. This is the email that's gone out. It's been received in Zimbabwe and here in South Africa, where, of course, many hundreds of thousands of Zimbabweans live in exile. The email calls for the million citizen march. It's dubbed Egypt-style protest spread from Tunisia to Zimbabwe. Time, Tuesday, 11 a.m. until Mugabe's resignation. A clear call for something like the popular uprisings in Tunisia and Egypt to take place in Zimbabwe.
India has sentenced 11 men to death for an arson attack which left dozens of people dead and led to big riots. Another 20 have been jailed for life. 59 passengers, most of them Hindu, died in the 2002 train fire in Gujarat state. Politicians blamed Muslims, sparking riots left after 2,000 people dead. All the suspects are Muslim, and some relatives say they were set up for political reasons. The country of Kyrgyzstan's facing another spring of discontent. Its new government's finding it very hard to get a grip on the economy, with food prices soaring, unemployment rising, and the country at risk of defaulting on its debt. From Bishkek, Robin Forestier-Walker.
Poverty flourishes in the shadow of these mountains. The ramshackle town of AlJazeera, population 15,000, the houses were built illegally on private land by rural poor seeking opportunity, just outside the capital Bishkek. The Doronov family has no running water, no electricity, and no local school to educate the children. Times are hard. Food price inflation is the highest in the region, up as much as 40% from this time a year ago.
After the revolution in April last year, it looked as if the fortunes of the people in this town had changed, because suddenly electricity pylons began to appear. But after the elections and the formation of the new coalition government, the work ceased. And the people here remain cut off, not just from the grid, but from the wider society.
One explanation is that there is no public money to finish projects like this. The government has pledged to increase the budget this year by 37%, but acknowledges substantial problems.
We have a budget with a deficit and a stagnant economy. Our first priority has been to stabilise the economy through elaborate mechanisms that could provide us with results this year.
That includes raising tax revenues, but 70 to 80% of all the money in Kyrgyzstan flows through the underground economy. And critics say this, above all, must be addressed.
They're not trying to, work with the current situation that we have with the grey economy and see how we can attract those businesses, those entrepreneurs, to come into the official sector and start paying taxes.
The quick fix for Kyrgyzstan will inevitably be aid and loans from international donors, but that means continuing dependency and debt. While towns like AlJazeera remain a symbol of sickness at the root of the Kyrgyz economy. Robin Forestier-Walker, AlJazeera, AlJazeera, Kyrgyzstan.
The German defense minister has resigned over a plagiarism row. Karl Theodor zu Guttenberg stepped down after he was allegedly found to have copied large parts of his doctoral thesis. Guttenberg was considered the most popular member of Angela Merkel's cabinet and until recently was a possible candidate for chancellor. Merkel says she's surprised by his resignation and accepted it with a heavy heart. Increasing pressure on Muammar Gaddafi, and there are fears about what he might do next. People in the opposition-held town of Nalut say pro-Gaddafi paramilitary forces are on the outskirts there, reportedly armed with anti-aircraft guns. In another opposition stronghold, Al-Zawiya, there are reports that food supplies into the city are being blocked. Growing tensions at the Libyan-Tunisian border, where thousands of people are trying to get into Tunisia. AlJazeera's correspondent there reports chaos, with some people trying to climb over a border wall and Tunisian security forces firing into the air to try to hold back the crowds. The United States and Britain are considering imposing no-fly zones over Libya. The US Secretary of State Hillary Clinton has said all necessary options are being considered for that country.
When it comes to Libya, the United States has led the way in imposing very strict sanctions that are finding assets and preventing those assets from going to the Gaddafi family or the Gaddafi leadership. We have also, with our NATO allies and with the Pentagon, begun to look at potential planning, preparedness in the event that we feel it's necessary for both humanitarian and other reasons that there would have to be actions taken.
Tunisia's most prominent opposition politicians resigned from the country's interim government. Regional Development Minister Ahmed Najib Chebi says he's not happy with the choice of the newly appointed Prime Minister. He's the third minister to leave the government in one day. One of the main opposition parties in Tunisia has been given permission to take part in politics after being banned for years. The Al Nahda party is led by Rashid Ghannouchi, who returned from exile in January after President Ben Ali was ousted. Yemen's president's hit out at Israel and the United States, saying they are behind the unrest sweeping his country and the rest of the Arab world. More protests calling for President Ali Abdullah Saleh to step down are being held in the capital Sana'a on Tuesday. And a senior Yemeni cleric has become the latest high-profile figure to join the anti-government movement. Police in the Democratic Republic of Congo have arrested more than 30 people after an attempted coup. Government said up to 60 armed men attacked the president's house on Sunday, killing 7 people. Country's leader, Joseph Kabila, wasn't